Hi there, this is a sort of revision clip for the things that we did in class on the 24th. And I'm going to be talking about some techniques of Hebrew rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of using language to try to persuade people of something. Now, up until now, we've been looking at stories, at narrative, and we've learnt techniques for dealing with stories. But now we need a new set of techniques to look at persuasive writing. And whether you're doing Isaiah or Deuteronomy for your sermon assignment, then you are going to need to understand something about how rhetoric works. So I'm going to start by talking about repetition, which is a really easy thing to approach, and it's pretty obvious how repetition helps to din into you the message that the writer is trying to convey. So I've got a text for you that we'll just examine together. And I have actually highlighted some repetition in it for us to start with. So these words, are you who, recur throughout this short passage. And this translation doesn't quite catch it because this is a woe. And for are you who, read woe to you who. So woe to you who drag iniquity, woe to you who call evil good, woe to you who are wise in your own eyes, woe to you who are heroes in drinking wine. And you can see that repeating this phrase, what it's doing is reminding us that this is a woe, that these people are under God's curse. And it stresses the awfulness of what people are doing. We can see how many ways in which they have they've gone off the straight and narrow, can't we? Because we repeat this phrase throughout. So that's one way in which repetition works in all persuasive writing. But there's something that's particularly found in Hebrew poetry and not so commonly elsewhere. And I'm going to explore that now with you. And that's a thing called parallelism, which basically is a posh way of saying the same thing twice in slightly different ways. And we've got one right at the beginning here in verse 18. Are you who drag iniquity along with cords of falsehood, who drag sin along as with cart ropes? It's obviously the same thing said twice, isn't it? It's about someone who drags either iniquity or sin, two words that mean the same thing, along with cords or ropes, again, two synonymous words. And we call this synonymous parallelism because it's about words that mean the same thing. Once you've seen them, you can find them everywhere. Look down here, for example, at verse 21 and verse 22. Ah, you who are wise in your own eyes and shrewd in your own sight. Well, we're using wise and shrewd and eyes and sight, but essentially saying the same thing twice. Verse 22, you who are heroes in drinking wine and valiant at mixing drinks. It's saying the same thing twice. And the second one isn't referring to making cocktails, it's actually referring to just putting water in wine. Okay, good. Now, there are slightly different ways in which you can use these techniques. I'll pick another colour. And I'd like to draw your attention to this one. Now here we've got three parallelisms. You who call evil good and good evil are the same people as those who put darkness for light and light for darkness, and bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. What's happened though is we've repeated it three times so we don't lose sight of the idea that these people have mixed up good and bad, and in fact can't tell the difference between good and bad. But what happens in the first one is that we use fairly concrete language, evil and good. But in the second one and the third one, we use metaphor. We use darkness and light, bitter and sweet. And using those opposites helps us to realize how difficult it is to mix up darkness and light, or bitter and sweet, and how nasty darkness and bitter are compared to light and sweet. So it helps to make Isaiah's point in this bit of the text. I'd also like you to look at something else which is quite common. We've got a little parallelism here. Let him make haste, let him speed his work. That's clear, isn't it? That's just saying the same thing twice. But it's actually part, that bit is part of a bigger parallelism. The whole of verse 19 is also a parallelism. Who say, let him make haste, let him speed his work that we may see it, is paralleled with, let the plan of the Holy One of Israel hasten to fulfillment, that we may know it. Hang on, I'm just going to close the door. So what we've got is two bits that say, let God hurry up. Let him make haste, let him speed his work, and let the plan of the Holy One of Israel hasten to fulfillment. Both mean, hurry up, God. And the first one is, hurry up, God, so we may see it. Hurry up, God, so we may know it. So there you've got a big parallelism, but in it, there's a little one in these first two lines about making haste and speeding his work. That occurs quite often in Hebrew poetry. This last one is slightly different. This isn't saying the same thing twice. You who acquit the guilty for a bribe and deprive the innocent of their rights. It is, however, all about injustice, isn't it? It's about the same thing, two ways of looking at the same thing, two sides of the same coin. The first bit is about letting the guilty go free, and the second one is about accusing the innocent and finding them guilty. It's not saying the same thing twice, it's talking in two different ways about the same concept, which is injustice. And just as some of the ones we've looked at, we would label as synonymous parallelism. A synonym is two words that mean the same, synonymous parallelism. You do need your teeth for this, don't you? Is about saying the same thing in slightly different words. But this one is two separate ideas on the same theme, adding up to the same thing, that these people are being unjust. And we tend to describe that in other terms, say perhaps that it's synthetic parallelism. But don't worry about the synthetic synonymous thing. That's not the important thing. The important thing is you recognize these parallelisms and you understand what they're doing, how they are reinforcing an idea in your mind as you read. They are persuasive language, they're rhetoric. You're going to find them all over the place in the Bible, so I hope that will be helpful. I think that's everything. I'll stop sharing and I'll see you soon.